welcome to the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast, episode 100. This is Yadi Caro, and I am so glad that you are here with me today. If this happens to be the first episode you listen to, in each episode I discuss a different skill with the help of an expert. I have spoken to globally recognized authors, Harvard professors, military leaders, psychologists, psychiatrists, people who have done scientific research on how to become better at the so-called soft skills to help you thrive in your career. I want to thank you for being with me in this learning journey. I started this alongside my graduate studies in organizational psychology at Harvard, which I am very close to completing, and through my own career journey, which at this time involves working with multiple technical teams to help them become high performing and create an agile organization. This is why today I chose to highlight this topic of agility because it embodies what soft skills are about, how to integrate human dynamics to deliver a solution. You could have the brightest minds working on a task, but nothing can happen in an effective way if the people involved do not have the mindset and the tools to work together. So in this episode, I'll play some excerpts from some of the folks who co-created the famous Agile Manifesto, the base document for all things Agile. Let's listen to Jeff Sutherland talking about what makes a great team, John Kern on what we really need or don't need to get things done faster, and Ari Van Benekum on the essentials of collaboration. But before we do, remember to go to my website, hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com, and check out all the episodes focused on different skills. And one of those skills is productivity. And you know how much I enjoy talking about being productive, trying to focus on the things I love, time for my family, my role helping high-performing tech teams, going to grad school, and this podcast. These past few weeks, I have been struggling perhaps because it's the holiday season and all the major deadlines are hitting at once. My usual morning coffee is not enough, so I started using Magic Mind. I simply woke up and took this little green shot made with natural ingredients like matcha and lion's mane's mushroom that not only improve your energy, but help you focus. Since the first shot, I noticed a difference and I have been taking it ever since. I think you should try it too. So go now to magicmind.com/softskills and use my code softskills20 for a 50% off your subscription. Plus, if you are in the US, you will find it in all Sprout supermarket starting in January. Now, let's listen. Do you consider that perhaps it's something could be team dynamics, or are there any, aside from having that great talent in a team, is there any individual skills or kind of considerations that should be taken in order to work effectively in an agile team?
Well, working as a team is always challenging, and if you look at great sports teams, I mean, Scrum comes from rugby, okay? So if you look at great rugby teams, the great rugby team captains are really legendary characters because they can inspire the teams to great performance, right? And how do they do that? And this is the Scrum Master, of course, in Scrum. How do they do that? Well, first of all, they stand up for the team. They block for the team. They speak for the team. They encourage the team, and the team is ready to get in there with them, shoulder to shoulder, and move it forward. So that ability for a Scrum Master is really important. And then if you look at the team, I mean, I've had many people, rugby players, in my classes, Scrum classes, and they say, in rugby, you're all arms linked in the Scrum formation, and when the ball is put into play, is a huge crush, and you have to be really positioned exactly in the right way, and you have to trust that every other team member will support you physically, or if you are, particularly if you're a short person, you can get crushed, you can get really injured. And so this ability to link up, synchronize with the team, and trust that everyone is going to support you so you can get through is critical. And the team leader, the scrum master and scrum, needs to help coach the teams to work in this way. And of course, there are always personal dynamics. So figuring out how to overcome that is a major job for both the team and the scrum master and the product owner for that matter.
What are some of the practices that any team or organization can implement to be able to be agile?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, the gap in time between taking an action and getting feedback.
Yeah.
If it's building an entire product and then revealing it, that's a very large, especially if it fails.
Yeah.
That's a very large gap in time between, doing something and getting feedback. So that's a lot of momentum. That's a huge batch. So a lot of it, especially if your audience, members haven't touched on some lean aspects. Lean is also a really fascinating realm to kind of get into, because there's a lot of good lessons around understanding flow. Because for me, I often shock people and say I don't do estimates. I don't do story points. Now I'll often say, I'll do an estimate when I have to, but it's a very rare occasion that you actually have to do an estimate. And the reason that works is because if you do a good job at, taking an epic or a feature and turning it into smaller bits of value, and even trying to negotiate scope away. A lot of times what I find is people do far too much work, far too in advance of actually needing it, whether it's too much requirements, too much, UX, weeks ahead or months ahead, all kinds of large documents, right? That's what we were combating back, in the late 90s and whatnot, was that kind of mentality of, giant amounts of requirements, and then we'll do design, right? No, that kind of batch work is what causes, too large of a momentum. It's too difficult to change. You're too invested in that large requirements document we drafted, and we had 10 people, in the company go through it, and we got this, the thumbs up, and then 2 weeks into implementing it, you get some really big slap in the face, maybe because somebody saw it and changed, but there's a lot of momentum already. It's really hard to change, but we already wrote a 100-page document. We have to do, so what I preach instead is, it sounds counterintuitive, but be more lazy, right? Like, don't just, and this is the problem of a siloed organization where you have experts in their little, I'm a UX. Well, guess what they do? They do UX all day long. Whether it's the right amount or the wrong amount, I don't know. But if, you're going to get 8 hours a day of UX, and I see ridiculously silly UX being done because it's a step in a process of a silo that people, if you pick one value to learn the interaction first type approach, individuals over process and tools, right? Talk to each other, understand what do you need from, what does someone expect from you? And that helps keep things small, and that helps improve the flow. And that reduces your momentum because you have smaller items going through the system and you make smaller mistakes. So it's really all about trying to be less sure of yourself. There's a lot of ego involved when you do a big chunk of work. That's a big hypothesis, assuming it's right. So what's the cheapest way to test? What's the, smallest thing you can do? And you'd be shocked at how small I can produce, something to get some feedback. Sometimes I like to say, think of the smallest thing you can do and then do less. But that's easier said than done for a lot of people.
I like the fact that you were agnostic, because a lot of the times when it comes to the implementation of an organization that says we're going to be agile, they kind of focus on which framework are we going to follow.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to hear what you mentioned earlier about experiments, because you were mentioning that
Yeah.
before you came about into Salt Lake City, you have tried different things. Tell us a little bit about those experiments. What you discovered that worked and what didn't work as you were trying to figure this way of
Yeah.
working out.
So let me start with two very important things. The first one is, if you look at the traditional ways of working, there are three essential problems. One is we misunderstand because of the remote and written communication. Information gets lost, gets distorted. That's number one. Number two, there is a lot of inefficiency in there, right? So you have, a development team does something, and then afterwards the QA team comes in, and then afterwards the legal team comes in, and then afterwards, and you have toll gates and waiting time, and documents get juggled up and down. So I thought, and that was my first experiment. And in hindsight, I thought, was this maybe a lucky shot, or was it common sense? I don't even know. But already in 1995, I started bringing all stakeholders together in what I call the heartbeat. Heartbeat is a session that you do twice a week. Takes half an hour, 45 minutes. Just to look at what have you done since the last heartbeat. Do you have any feedback? And in that session, we have the developers, we have the business, but the other stakeholders who are not taking advantage of the solution but have a say in going live, the legal department, the security department, the architecture department, whatever department you have, I got them in those sessions as well. So everybody could on the spot directly give feedback. By the end of the sprint, you're ready. There's nobody who has, up front, you have to identify who are the stakeholders, obviously. But that was the number one. All stakeholder sessions are crucial if you want to cut out the delay. Very important. But if you have those, and now the second one, if you have those people together, everybody has their own language. We have the business language, the security language, the architecture language, the development language. So you have to find a common language. And I remember in a project for the Navy, I thought, how am I going to do this? So we have this session coming up, this heartbeat session. And I thought, how am I going to do this? I said, what this is about processes for providing submarines with stock and stuff. And okay, so we go through the process. So I took the process as it was, put it in the session on the wall, flip charts, and we had the people, the Marines from the submarines in the room, and we got completely lost. No, I started talking about the data. That was the one. I started talking about the data that was flowing around. And I still see those guys looking at me. And after half an hour, I stopped the session. And stop. I have to do this again. And then I went into the process. And I just asked them, because I had the data so long ago. I had the data written on flip charts, but they didn't get it. I was IT thinking, I have entities and attributes. And it's like, and they were like, oh. And then tell me what you do. And what would help you in this situation? And then they would make, for example, a drawing on a flip chart, you can call it a prototype, right? A very early prototype. And then I would ask security and architect, guys, does this work for you? Or what are the criteria to meet? If we have criteria to meet, let's write them separately on a flip chart. So after every session, all of a sudden, everybody understood what the business was doing and why they needed it. And everybody could contribute with feedback, and there would be feedback also from developers that would say, okay, if you do it like this, it's very difficult to make, very complicated. Can we do it like this? Would that help? Would that also be beneficial? Oh yeah, that would. So, that kind of logic came out. And so that was for me, I think, the most important one in all my learnings, and one of the biggest fails, because I remember that I always thought that people on a submarine are very, very tiny people. But there was this massive guy with a blue knitwear roll neck and a red beard and glasses, and he came up from behind this table, and I thought, I think you're not happy now. So that was a big learning, and maybe another learning but that's more generic about Agile. You know, when I started doing this, for me, it was like common sense, right? I always say Agile is structured common sense. But you have to understand that structured common sense is on this level, and then the level below, you need the organization to facilitate that kind of work. For example, all stakeholders in a session, that means that the stakeholders need to be empowered to say yes or no on behalf of the department or whatever that they represent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's difficult. That's very difficult because people have been brought up, have been educated, have been raised. You know, you get new as a junior into the company. There are the seniors. They will tell you what it is. If you have a brilliant idea, they will cut it down because, you know, this is not how we do it here. And that transformation, what is for me common sense, is a difficult one. Still today, I was talking tomorrow about it. I had another call. And I literally got triggered into diving in. What is the big problem here? After that, I was at an organization struggling with projects all their life. I did 3 projects, happy client, in time, on budget, right? Very successful. And then the CIO came to me and he said, Ari, I know you're doing well with your projects, but we're not going to work like this because it's so complicated. And I thought, I put people at the table together and make drawings and, you know, diverge, converge. It's not complicated. No, this is not complicated. But the level below, that's complicated. You know, that surface of doing Agile, you know, you see, we do sprints. Yeah, and then we do a sprint for design, and we do a sprint for development, and we do a sprint for test, and we do, you know, okay, so people copy the words. But that deep level, you know, where you really understand what it is, that's a difficult one. And I also think that's why Agile transformations are not easy. Let me put it mildly. Yeah. Big learning was that one. What is common sense to me is not common sense to somebody else, right?